See this plane? It's America's Mach 3 super bomber that you never heard about. The North American XB-70 Valkyrie was the largest and fastest bomber ever built by the United States, but the massive 6-engine Mach 3 capable jet never entered production. Only one surviving prototype sits in a museum in Dayton, Ohio, even as the Boeing B-52 it was supposed to one day replace continues to soldier on. Named Valkyrie after the female battle spirits of Norse mythology, the bomber was built to penetrate Soviet air defenses in a nuclear war and deliver thermonuclear bombs on targets. The XB-70 was 196 feet long, 31 feet tall at the tail, and had a maximum gross weight of 521,000 pounds. The Valkyrie was fabricated using stainless steel honeycomb sandwich panels and titanium. It was designed to make use of a phenomenon called compression lift, achieved when the shock wave generated by the airplane flying at supersonic speeds supports part of the airplane's weight. This unique characteristic reduced drag and was one of the secrets of the XB-70's performance. The idea behind the XB-70 originated in the 1950s, when it was assumed even greater speeds and altitudes would enable American bombers to survive against Soviet air defenses unmolested on their way to delivering their doomsday payloads. At the time, the only effective defense against bombers were fighters and anti-aircraft artillery. Even then, anti-aircraft guns were only marginally effective, and interceptors were increasingly challenged by ever-improving bomber performance. But the introduction of the first Soviet surface-to-air missiles in the late 1950s changed that picture dramatically. Suddenly, the XB-70 were much more vulnerable, and even its Mach 3 speeds could not guarantee its survival. To cope with the rising threat of Soviet missiles, the United States Air Force began to fly missions at a lower altitude where the enemy radar would have more trouble tracking its target. But at these lower altitudes, the XB-70 Valkyrie would be much less effective. So much, in fact, that it would not perform better than the B-52, the bomber it was meant to replace. Mission range and fuel economy would also suffer when flying lower. Another nail in the coffin for the XB-70 project was the development of ICBM missiles in the late 1950s. The Valkyrie was specifically designed to carry the heavy nuclear weapons, but now the ICBMs threatened the role of the aircraft. President Eisenhower was not a big believer in the Valkyrie project, as he saw no real need for the aircraft. His main points against it were the same as the above-mentioned ones. Rockets and missiles were a threat, and ICBMs were a cheaper, more effective way of doing the same thing, he said. He also pointed out that the aircraft, that was still in development, would be obsolete by the time it was ready for full-scale manufacturing. Technology would simply have caught up to the Valkyrie. The Eisenhower administration cut the project to a single prototype. Kennedy, however, endorsed the XB-70, and it actually became part of his election campaign to do so. But at the time he became president, the XB-70 Valkyrie project had already cost equal to almost $7 billion today, a hefty sum for a bomber. So in 1961, he canceled the project. It had become too expensive and unnecessary. Instead, Kennedy changed the XB-70 program to a research project. The Valkyrie was perfect for exploring the effects of supersonic flight and propulsion. North American Aviation completed the first prototype, called AV-1, in May 1964 in Palmdale, California. A second prototype, the AV-2, quickly followed in October the same year. A third prototype was planned but got canceled. In September 1964, the first XB-70 embarked on its first flight. The Valkyrie first went supersonic when it reached Mach 1.1 on the third test flight on October 12, 1964. It first surpassed Mach 3 on October 14, 1965, where the AV-1 reached Mach 3.02 at 70,000 feet. The AV-2 followed its sister's footsteps and became the one to hold the record for the highest speed of the two prototype aircraft. In April 1966, the AV-2 reached and maintained a top speed of Mach 3.08 for 20 minutes. A month later, the AV-2 flew at Mach 3.06 for 32 minutes and covered a distance of 3,900 kilometers, or 2,400 miles, in the 91 minutes flight time. Tragedy struck on June 8, 1966, when the second XB-70 prototype was destroyed in a crash after a mid-air collision with its F-104N chase plane. 2 people were killed and 1 was severely injured during the accident. The loss of the second aircraft, which was much more capable than the first, was a huge setback. Testing, however, continued until February 4, 1969. Ultimately, the first XB-70 logged 83 flights totaling 160 hours and 16 minutes, while the second XB-70 logged 46 flights totaling 92 hours and 22 minutes, according to NASA. The XB-70 Valkyrie last went supersonic in December 1968. In February the following year, the Valkyrie AV-1 took its final flight to the National Museum of the United States Air Force near Dayton, Ohio. It's still on display there. The XB-70 Valkyrie was indeed ahead of its time. Despite a turbulent life from development to retirement, the futuristic supersonic bomber amazes with its looks, performance, and history. It was a product of the Cold War, where experts thought that Mach 3 speeds and higher altitudes could protect a bomber carrying nuclear weapons. But development costs and advances in technology eventually made the XB-70 Valkyrie unnecessary. Instead, the bomber was used in a research project aimed to study supersonic flight. The Valkyrie generated valuable insights about supersonic flight, insights that were later used in other military aircraft. The crash in 1966 became a darker chapter in the history of the aircraft, but the remaining Valkyrie continued its work in research and eventually went on display in 1969 in a museum in Ohio. The XB-70, while a technological wonder at the time, was the wrong plane for the wrong time. It came at a time when ballistic missiles were thought to be supplanting manned bombers. Moreover, it was being developed at a time when it was increasingly apparent that high speed and high altitude were not sufficient protection against surface-to-air missiles or the next generation of Soviet fighters. Though its intended role as a strategic bomber was unsuccessful, the Valkyrie project contributed to later projects like the B-1B Lancer bomber, the SR-71 Blackbird spy plane, and other projects. More's the pity. It would likely have been the fastest bomber ever.
Hey there everybody, Boyd here with you again, and welcome to our next model building adventure here on the channel. This is going to be a really fun and interesting kit to build. This is the AMT Ertl North American XB-70A Valkyrie kit. This is a vintage kit from 1995. It's in 1/72 scale, so it's a pretty large model. The box art here says that the kit builds out to around 31 inches in length with about an 18-inch wingspan. So it'll be a challenge finding a home for this. Once I'm done building it, I'll probably wind up hanging this one from the ceiling in my display room. But I've wanted to build this model for quite a while. This is a really unique aircraft. Those of you out there who are aircraft historians probably know all about this airplane. I'll probably talk a little bit more in detail about it as the build series goes. But just some basic info about it is that there was only 2 of these that were ever built. It was America's first attempt at building a supersonic bomber, and the program was considered sort of you know, a minor success as far as they learned, you know, quite a bit about what it was going to take to, you know, build supersonic aircraft on a large size like this. There were some things that were positive and things that were negative. The biggest negative about the program is that you guys that follow this probably already know the original prototype, the first of the aircraft that were built, that was actually the real workhorse that they did most of the flight testing with and that achieved the highest speeds and all that, was unfortunately lost in a tragic crash. So there's only one of these remaining, and it's on display at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. But it's the kind of the lesser of the two. It had the lesser accomplishments of the two airplanes, and it never flew as fast as the original prototype, but it's just really cool that they still have an example of it on display, and people who have seen it in person talk about how absolutely massive it is and just beautiful to look at. I've always liked the design. Thought it looked like something that came right out of the fictitious Thunderbirds TV show, but it was a real airplane. This is probably my second favorite airplane, next to the SR-71 Blackbird as far as how they look. I just think they're fantastic looking aircraft. So I've had my eye on this kit for quite a while. They're getting kind of hard to find. I just popped on eBay a couple of weeks ago and actually found this one still sealed in the plastic for a really good price compared to what they usually go for. And he had a buy it now on it, so I grabbed it right away. Some detail on the side panel here you can see. It's not a super high parts count kit. It's not nearly as detailed as some of the more modern kits. But you get enough to give a good representation of the airplane, and mainly the exterior is what I'm worried about anyway. You know, with these aircraft kits, it's all well and good to have a, you know, super detailed interior, but in most cases when you finish building it, you can't see any of it. So you do an awful lot of work that only you know you did. Anyone else that looks at it just, you know, can't even see that. So, but you get a little bit of cockpit detail. You get some detail on the engines here in the back, and I think there's some aftermarket parts available for this, which they might be a little scarce these days because the kit itself is pretty scarce. But here you can see these unique landing gear that the aircraft had on it. The actual tires were treated with an aluminum coating, so they appear kind of silvery white, and that was due to, you know, the excessive heat that would build up. They found out that during supersonic flight tests that even when the wheels were stored up inside the landing gear bays, that they would pop or blow up from the severe heat that was generated from flying at supersonic speed. So that was their solution for that. They coated them with a heat-resistant material. Over on the other side here, you get just an overall shot of the airplane. Just a beautiful, sleek-looking design. And you had this unique feature of the aircraft that had these foldable wingtips here, which they would engage once they reached a certain Mach number to provide extra stability, you know, for the plane to fly in a straight line. Now, getting back to the crash of this aircraft, it was kind of a tragic event. They were basically doing a routine photo shoot to promote NASA and the Air Force, and they were, you know, taking some photographs. They had some chase planes, and I can't remember all the aircraft. There might have been a Phantom and another type of plane, but the one that I do know for sure was an F-104 Starfighter, flown by a pilot named Walker, who was actually a really famous NASA test pilot that actually participated in the X-15 program. And apparently what had happened is they had gotten word that there was an aircraft approaching their flight from somewhere up forward, and as they were flying in a kind of a tight formation, the F-104 pilot, who was off to the right here on the wing, just off the right wingtip of the Valkyrie, started looking forward to kind of get an eye contact on the plane that they had thought was coming in, and apparently you know, didn't realize he was drifting closer and closer to the Valkyrie here, and he wound up clipping the back half of the plane, the aircraft. The F-104 basically went over the top and took off both vertical stabilizers here. The F-104 exploded immediately, killing the pilot, and the Valkyrie flew on for another up to about a minute, is what most people thought, and then it slowly started to lose stability, and once it started yawing out of control, they couldn't get it back. Now, the pilot was able to eject, but unfortunately the co-pilot was not, and he went down with the aircraft. It wound up crashing, and so there's only one known example of this airplane left, like I said, at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Museum. So it makes it a really rare and unique aircraft, but it's not the crash that interested in me in this. It was just always the way it looked, and I remember as a kid watching a documentary about this and just being in awe of how it looked. So it should be really fun to build this, and I'm just really looking forward to it. We're just going to try to paint this up basically like the box art here. It's a really basic paint job. They call for a gloss white and a gloss black here up at the nose. The kit does give you both the Supersonic and the Subsonic nose, which if you guys aren't familiar with that, it's very similar to the Concorde, where it had the droop nose ability. Once they hit supersonic speed, they could straighten it out. The droop nose was not actually to help the plane fly better, as a lot of people think is with the Concorde. It's so that they could actually tilt the windshield down, so that when the pilots went to land the airplane, that they could have a better view. A lot of people have a misconception about that they actually changed that angle to help the plane in flight, but it has absolutely nothing to do with that. But they give you both noses, so we're going to build it in the supersonic mode. We're going to put the NASA markings on it and everything. And this will be a lot of fun. We'll have to do a little bit of panel detail here. But I just wanted to pop it out of the box here in this first video and show you guys, for those of you who are interested in maybe have never seen this kit before. Again, like I said, it's not a really super high parts count kit, but we'll just take a look. I've done some preliminary work here already. I've started to go around and sand my edges and everything and get rid of all the extra plastic that's on there from being on the sprues and everything. But these are humongous parts, as you can see. And from what I can tell, everything looks like it's pretty straight. No major warp issues or any defects in any of the molds that I can find. Here's the bottom of the fuselage. You can see you got this, it's not a really super detailed kit. You got these basic landing gear wells. There's a little bit of detail that we can kind of hand paint, go in there and make that look a little bit better. It does have some nice paneling here that we can bring out, so that'll make it look a little bit better. Here's the wing upper parts. Basically, it kind of locks together something like this. Just kind of show you that really quick. Get these little tabs tucked in, and then it kind of folds over. Then you glue the fuselage to the top of it. But you can see it's already starting to get pretty large, just based on my hand size there. And here's part of the fuselage here. Some of the stuff's still in the bags. We have these vertical stabilizers. We have the hinges for the... unfortunately, this isn't hinged. You can either build it with the drooped wings or the wings straight across. So we're going to build it as a drooped version, like it's in supersonic flight. So that'll work out just fine. Some parts still sealed in the bags here. I don't want to really open these yet, but you get the basic idea. Got all your landing gear parts in here, the engine exhaust nozzles, some of the cockpit detail, the rest of the fuselage is in there. I'm going to actually look around. Some of you guys might be able to answer that for me, but I'm going to look around and see if there's any aftermarket like metal landing gear that's available for this. I'm not sure how sturdy these are going to be. I'll take a look at them. If they seem okay, I'll go with them. But the size of this aircraft and everything, even though I'm going to be hanging it from the ceiling, I'm probably going to build it with the gear down. And if I do want to set it on top of something, I want to make sure the gear are going to be sturdy enough. They don't mention it at all in the instructions that you have to put weight in the front end to keep the nose down. They usually will mention that if that's the case, so hopefully it'll sit on its tricycle landing gear all by itself without having to do that, but we'll find out. And here's some clear parts for the canopy and all that we'll have to paint up. Again, they give you both versions of the canopy here, either upper or down. And you get two sets of instructions here that I noticed. One is the assembly instructions, which I think is this one. We'll check it out here. No, this is the actual painting guide and decal placement guide. But you can see you get a pretty good layout here of where all that stuff goes. Pretty easy to paint. It's basically all white with a little bit of black and some panel detail. And then here we have the actual assembly instructions. Check that out really quick. You start off like you do typically on a lot of aircraft kits, where you're building the cockpit first, then we get into the landing gear. Actual assembly of this should be pretty straightforward. I could probably actually build this entire thing in one evening. It's just going to be the painting and everything. It's going to take a little bit more time. And then we've got the wings and the fuselage going together there. The kit doesn't come with any kind of a display stand, so if you do want to put this on your desk or something like that, you'll have to come up with something for that. And here's the final assembly with the gear going on and the stabilizers and the cockpit canopy and all that. I do wish the kit would have came with some hinges for the foldable wingtips, and who knows, when I get looking at it, maybe I can actually design something here that'll work for that. We'll see. And here's the decal set. Biggest thing I was glad to see here was that this being a 1995 vintage kit, these decals basically look brand new. So I don't think we're going to have any problem with those. Get our NASA and U.S. Air Force markings decals. This will be a really sharp looking plane when it's all done. Okay, you guys, well, I just wanted to give you a quick look at the kit, talk about what the plan is a little bit here for the build. I'm going to get started on it this weekend. I'll probably work on it while I'm watching the Super Bowl a little bit tomorrow evening, and I'll be starting to put out regular updates on this starting next week. Don't know how many episodes it'll be. Probably won't be too bad, though. I mean, this looks like it's going to be a pretty straightforward build. And then I've actually gone ahead and ordered the new Revell 1/48 scale Blackbird kit, which should probably come in this week sometime. And I haven't made up my mind if I'm going to build that one right away after this one, or we're going to get into something else. We'll see how that goes. So there's a look at the Valkyrie kit, you guys. Pretty cool model. I'm glad I finally got one, and we shouldn't have any problems because it was still in the sealed plastic and everything. It should be complete. So I hope you guys will enjoy this build. I mentioned this over on Facebook, and it seemed like a lot of people were interested in it. So hope you'll follow along and check it out, you guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll catch up with you probably Sunday evening or maybe Monday with an update on this on the first part of the assembly. We'll see you then, everybody. Take care and happy modeling.